There's a fundamental truth we often forget in our hustle to be productive, successful, or even just busy. And it's this: if you don't know why you're doing something, it doesn't matter how perfectly you plan it. Purpose must always come before the plan. We've become really good at building systems. We create spreadsheets, set reminders, download apps to manage our goals, and we plot out every quarter with color-coded calendars. But none of that guarantees success, because while systems may help you stay organized, they can never replace clarity, and clarity always starts with purpose. Let me tell you a story. There was a young entrepreneur I met a few years ago. She had just launched a tech startup, and from the outside everything looked polished. Her pitch deck was flawless. Her roadmap was airtight. Her marketing plan was backed by data. She even had investors lined up. She did everything by the book. But just 6 months in, she walked away, burnt out, frustrated, completely disillusioned. When I asked her what went wrong, she said something that stuck with me. She said, "I knew what I was building, but I never asked myself why I was building it." And that's where the disconnect was. We are not machines. We're not just meant to do things. We are wired for meaning. We need to feel that what we're working on matters, that it serves something larger than a to-do list or a profit margin. Because if you're not clear on your why, your plan is just a polished version of being lost. When people say they're stuck, it's rarely because they don't have a plan. It's usually because they're disconnected from their purpose. Plans are external. Purpose is internal. A plan is something you can download or copy. Purpose is something only you can define. And without it, no amount of hustle will make you feel fulfilled. Purpose is what drives resilience. When you know your why, obstacles don't stop you, they refine you. Failure doesn't destroy you, it teaches you. Detours don't confuse you, they sharpen your route. But without purpose, every setback feels like a dead end. Every challenge feels personal. Every day feels like a grind instead of a mission. I've seen organizations with brilliant strategies fail simply because their people weren't inspired. The employees knew what to do. They had KPIs, OKRs, and all the corporate alphabet soup you can imagine. But no one felt connected. No one felt seen. No one knew the bigger picture they were contributing to. And when people don't feel connected to purpose, they disengage not out of laziness, but out of misalignment. Now, here's the interesting part. When you're clear about your purpose, your plans don't have to be perfect. Purpose gives you the flexibility to evolve. You're allowed to make mistakes, pivot, change your methods. Because you're anchored. You're grounded in something deeper. The goal isn't perfection, it's direction. And purpose gives you that direction even when the path isn't clear. So how do you find your purpose? You start by asking better questions. Not, what should I do? But what impact do I want to make? Not, how can I win? But what problem am I here to solve? Not, how do I look successful? But what does success feel like to me? These questions aren't easy. They require honesty, they require vulnerability, and sometimes they require unlearning things you believed your whole life. But when you start asking them, you begin to uncover a compass that no business plan can give you. One of the biggest myths we buy into is that we need to have it all figured out before we start. That's not true. You don't need to have the entire road mapped. You just need a reason to take the first step, a reason that matters to you. Because when your actions are aligned with your purpose, people feel it. They trust you. They follow you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Think about the people who've impacted your life the most. The mentors, the leaders, the friends. I guarantee it wasn't their resume or credentials that moved you. It was their conviction, their clarity, their sense of purpose. You could feel it when they spoke. You could see it in the way they acted. And that's what made them trustworthy. That's what made them magnetic. Now imagine applying that same kind of clarity to your own journey. Imagine waking up and knowing deep down that what you're doing matters not just to your bank account, not just to your social status, but to your soul. Imagine building something not because it's trending, but because it's true to who you are. That's the power of purpose. That's what makes a plan come alive. I'm not saying planning isn't important. Of course it is. Planning gives you structure. It keeps you accountable. But it should never come first. Because if you fail to start with purpose, every plan you make is a gamble. You might succeed externally and still feel empty. You might achieve your goals and still question if they were worth it. But if you start with purpose, your journey becomes meaningful even before you arrive at the destination. Your effort becomes valuable even when results take time. Your story becomes one worth telling. Not because it's perfect, but because it's true. So the next time you're about to start something, a project, a business, a new chapter, pause. Don't rush into planning. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who will this serve? What change am I trying to make? Sit with those questions. Wrestle with them. Let them shape you. Because your purpose isn't a slogan. It's not a tagline. It's your foundation. And when you build from that place, your plans don't just work. They matter. We don't remember people for how well they executed a plan. We remember them for what they stood for what they believed, for the courage they had to align their actions with something bigger than themselves. That's the kind of legacy worth building, and it always begins with purpose. We live in a world obsessed with movement. The faster, the better. Hustle culture praises long hours and relentless effort. But what good is speed if you're heading in the wrong direction? What good is effort if there's no clarity on where you're going? Motion without vision isn't progress. It's just exhaustion. That's why vision isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the thing that turns plans into purpose-driven journeys. It gives direction to the chaos and meaning to the grind. I once sat down with a team of executives who were preparing for the next fiscal year. They had dozens of initiatives laid out on a whiteboard, all neatly categorized, budgeted, and scheduled. But when I asked, what's the vision behind all of this? The room fell silent. They had plans, they had goals, but they had no idea what story they were telling, no idea what the future looked like once those plans were complete. And that's the problem. When there's no vision, people default to business. We mistake activity for achievement. We chase numbers instead of purpose. We get caught up in the short term because the long term feels too far away, or worse, too unclear. That's when burnout happens. That's when people stop caring. Not because they're lazy, but because they don't know what they're working toward. Vision is about seeing beyond the now. It's about imagining a world that doesn't yet exist and committing yourself to building it. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to know exactly how you'll get there. You just have to know what it looks like and why it matters. When you have that kind of clarity, your decisions change, your priorities shift, you stop reacting to everything and start choosing what truly deserves your attention. Years ago, I met a school principal in a low-income neighborhood. Her school didn't have a lot of funding. The infrastructure was old. The staff was overwhelmed. Most people would have seen it as a place barely surviving. But she had a vision. She didn't just want her school to improve. She wanted it to become the heartbeat of the community. A place where students felt safe, challenged, and inspired. A place where parents felt welcomed. A place that created not just good test scores, but good people. That vision changed everything. She began making decisions not just based on budget, but on alignment. Every initiative had to support the vision. Every hire had to reflect the values. Every morning assembly, every hallway poster, every parent meeting, all of it served the bigger picture. And the results, they didn't happen overnight, but they happened. Not because of luck, but because everyone, from the janitor to the students, knew exactly what they were building together. That's the power of vision. It creates alignment. It gives people a reason to show up beyond their job description. It connects the daily grind to something meaningful. You see, strategy is temporary. It evolves. It changes based on conditions. But vision is timeless. It doesn't waver when obstacles appear. It doesn't collapse under pressure. In fact, the harder things get, the more important it becomes. Because when the path gets foggy, vision becomes your compass. I often tell people, don't build a plan around where you are. Build it around where you're going. Because where you are now is just the starting point. It's not your identity. It's your launch pad. But if you keep making decisions based only on your current reality, your current budget, your current fear, your current limitations, you'll never get anywhere new. Vision pulls you forward. It invites you to play a bigger game, one that's not just about surviving, but about creating something better. And this applies not just to teams or organizations, but to individuals. There are people right now working jobs they don't love, staying in relationships that drain them, saying yes to things they don't believe in, not because they're incapable, because they've lost sight of the future they once dreamed of. They stopped imagining. They stopped believing. And so they settled into maintenance mode, hoping that someday something will change. But change doesn't come from waiting, it comes from envisioning. You have to be able to see a life worth fighting for before you start building it. Vision isn't a wish list. It's not fantasy. It's a declaration. It says, this is what matters to me. This is the kind of life I want to live. This is the impact I want to make. And when you say it out loud, when you put it on paper, when you speak it into your team or your family or your company, something shifts. You stop playing small, you stop following trends, you start leading. People don't rally around plans, they rally around purpose. They follow leaders who see a better future and invite them into it. They buy into missions, not memos. So if you want to lead in your career, in your community, in your family, start with vision. Get clear on what matters to you. Get bold about the kind of world you want to help create, and then let that vision shape every decision you make. There's one more thing that often gets overlooked. A vision requires courage. Because when you have a clear vision, you will have to say no to things that are good in order to stay true to what's great. You'll have to walk away from comfort. You'll have to disappoint people. You'll have to go against the grain. Vision demands that you trade popularity for purpose. That's not easy, but it's always worth it. So the next time you sit down to make a plan, whether it's for your business, your goals, your next chapter, stop and ask yourself, What am I building? Who will it serve? What does the future look like if this succeeds? Let your vision lead the way. Let it be your North Star. Because when you have direction, your plans gain power. Your work gains momentum. And your life gains meaning. You don't need all the answers. You don't need a detailed map. You just need a vision bold enough to follow and true enough to fight for. That's when your plans start to matter. That's when your journey becomes more than motion, it becomes movement. Most people spend their lives reacting to emails, reacting to problems, reacting to deadlines, disappointments, and distractions. It's a survival loop, always responding, never initiating. But the people who truly lead, the ones who rise, who create impact, who stay ahead, they play a different game. They anticipate, they don't just wait for things to happen. They prepare for what's next. There's a difference between living on defense and living on offense. Defense is safe, it's reactive, it's passive. Offense requires vision. It requires courage. It requires you to step out ahead of what's urgent and start thinking about what's important. When you anticipate, you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your future. Years ago, I met a young leader at a conference. He wasn't in charge of a massive team. He didn't have a fancy title or a big office, but he had something else. He had foresight. While others were content just hitting their quarterly targets, he was studying industry trends, researching shifts in customer behavior, watching competitors not to copy them, but to learn from their mistakes. He saw things coming before they arrived. And because of that, he was always prepared, always calm, always a few steps ahead. One day I asked him, "What drives you to look so far ahead?" His answer was simple. He said, "Because I'd rather be ready than lucky." That stuck with me. Too many people build their lives hoping things go their way. They cross their fingers, they pray for opportunities, they wait for the perfect time. But the truth is, opportunity doesn't knock, it whispers. And only those who are paying attention can hear it. Anticipation is about listening closely. It's about staying alert, staying informed, and staying curious. Reacting is easy, it's emotional, it's instant. But anticipation, that takes discipline, it takes stillness, it takes the willingness to sit in silence and think, really think about where things are going, what trends are emerging, what challenges are likely to arise, what decisions are being made today that will shape tomorrow. Great leaders don't just have answers, they ask better questions, they make time for reflection, they zoom out from the noise and look at the bigger picture. And because of that, they see what others miss. I once worked with an organization that was doing really well, high profits, fast growth, loyal customers. But instead of getting comfortable, the leadership team started asking, what's next? What's changing in our space? What risks aren't on our radar yet? That mindset allowed them to pivot when the market shifted. While their competitors were scrambling, they were adapting. Not because they were lucky, but because they anticipated change. They had baked agility into their culture. It's easy to admire that kind of thinking. But here's the truth, anticipation isn't glamorous. It's not always exciting. It means reading when you could be relaxing. It means preparing for failure when everyone else is celebrating success. It means investing in relationships before you need them. It means building systems that may not pay off immediately, but will save you when the unexpected hits. And unexpected always hits. Life isn't linear. Business isn't predictable. Plans don't always work out. But anticipation is what gives you resilience when things fall apart. It's what allows you to bend without breaking. It gives you margin. It gives you options. It gives you time. Think about the last time you faced a crisis, a true out-of-nowhere challenge. Most people panic in those moments. They scramble. They react. But those who have anticipated, those who've taken time to plan for uncertainty, they don't just survive, they lead. They become the calm in the storm. This is why emotional regulation is such an important part of anticipation. When you're always reacting, your emotions control your decisions. But when you anticipate, you stay centered. You're not thrown off by every new headline, every email, every critique. You've already thought it through. You've already visualized the scenarios. You're not just operating from instinct, you're operating from insight. There's also a humility that comes with anticipation, because to truly anticipate, you have to admit that you don't know everything. You have to acknowledge that the future is uncertain, and that preparation isn't about fear. It's about responsibility. It's about being a steward of the opportunities and people have been entrusted with. Some people resist anticipation because they think it kills spontaneity, but that's not true. It actually creates freedom. When you've done the work to anticipate, you're more relaxed in the moment. You can be present. You can pivot without panic. You can embrace the unexpected. Not because you predicted the exact event, but because you built a mindset that's ready for it. I've seen people with all the resources in the world fail because they were reactive. They assumed what worked yesterday would work tomorrow. They didn't listen to the whispers of change. They didn't plan for disruption. And when it came, they blamed the market, the government, the economy, everything but their own lack of foresight. And I've seen underdogs thrive, not because they had more, but because they saw more. They looked around the corner. They stayed curious. They didn't just ask, what do we need now? They asked, what will we need next? That mindset can't be downloaded from a template. It has to be cultivated. You have to build it over time. By paying attention, by reading beyond your industry, by surrounding yourself with people who challenge your thinking, by staying open to new ideas even when they make you uncomfortable. Anticipation isn't about being right all the time, it's about being ready. It's about living with your eyes open. It's about saying, I can't control the future, but I can be prepared for it. So ask yourself, am I reacting or anticipating? Am I building systems that help me adapt? Am I creating space in my life to reflect, think, and plan for what's coming? Because the people who rise are not the ones who move fastest. They're the ones who see furthest. The ones who stay steady when others panic. The ones who respond with clarity instead of fear. They are the ones who understood a simple but powerful truth: reacting is surviving. Anticipating is leading, and leadership, real leadership, always starts with a vision of what's coming next. The word discipline doesn't excite most people. It sounds rigid, cold, even punishing. It reminds us of early mornings, strict routines, rules, and restraint. We associate it with control, sometimes even with suffering. But what if we've misunderstood it? What if discipline isn't about restriction at all? What if instead discipline is the very thing that unlocks freedom? It sounds like a contradiction at first. How can something that limits us also set us free? But the truth is, without discipline, there is no freedom. Not the kind that matters. Not the kind that lasts. Freedom isn't the absence of structure. It's the ability to choose what matters most and follow through on it. And the only way we gain that kind of power, the kind that lets us build a life of intention rather than accident, is through discipline. I met a young man once who had extraordinary talent. He was smart, articulate, and bursting with creativity. Ideas flowed from him like water. But every time I checked in with him, nothing had materialized. His book wasn't written. His business wasn't launched. His plans hadn't moved past that one-day stage. And eventually I asked him what was holding him back. He said, I just don't want to feel boxed in. I want to stay open, stay inspired. I don't want to force anything. That mindset might sound noble, even romantic, but it's a trap. Because what he called freedom was actually avoidance. He wasn't free. He was floating. He wasn't in control. He was drifting. And the truth is, without structure, our gifts go to waste. Without discipline, potential stays potential. It never becomes impact. The most creative people I know, the ones who make real change in the world, they're not free spirits bouncing from one idea to the next. They're consistent. They show up when it's boring. They keep going when it's hard. They make time for what matters, and they protect that time like their life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Discipline is what builds momentum. It's what makes space for mastery. It's what lets you say no to the distractions that pull you away from your purpose. And the more disciplined you are with your time, your energy, your focus, the more you're able to live by design instead of default. A lot of people confuse motivation with discipline. They wait until they feel inspired to start something. But the most important work rarely shows up when you feel like doing it. That's why discipline matters, because it keeps you moving when emotion fades. It's the bridge between what you want and what you actually build. Think of any athlete who's ever stepped onto a podium. Behind that one shining moment are thousands of hours most people never see.